Mental health. Mental health refers to cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being. It is all about how people think, feel, and behave. People sometimes use the term mental health to mean the absence of a mental disorder, which includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. There are few types of mental illnesses. The first one is depression, anxiety disorder, personality disorder, psychotic disorder, eating disorder, trauma-related disorder, and the last one is substance abuse disorder. Mental health and coronavirus crisis. While the world is currently responding to the spread of the coronavirus in critical ways, acknowledgement of mental illness vulnerabilities has been cursory. While information for medical aspects of disaster search is increasingly available, there is little guidance for healthcare facilities on how to manage psychological aspects of large-scale disasters. It is more serious because not all mental health professionals are trained in pandemic management but need to be mobilized to provide psychosocial support to the frontliners and communities. There are two triggers of mental illness during this coronavirus crisis. The first one is sadness when we fear of our lives and the health of the loved ones. And the second one is stress when our emotional attachment decay as a result of social isolation. Social isolation. Social isolation generates at least as much escalation of mental illness as does fear of the virus itself. A psychologist found that social isolation is twice as harmful to a person's physical health as obesity. Solitary confinement in prison systems cause panic attacks and hallucination, which makes people more vulnerable to the disease it is intended to forestall. Many studies have documented that plenty of emotional and physical health benefits come from touch. There are roughly four responses to the coronavirus crisis and the contingent social isolation. The first group is the group who takes it all in stride and rely on a foundation of unshakable psychic stability. The second group is those who constitute the worried well but only need a bit of psychological first aid to help them manage their worries well. The third group is the group who have not previously experienced these disorders and are currently being catapulted into them. The last one is the most dangerous group, which they already suffered from the major depressive disorder and have had their condition exacerbate, developing what clinicians call as double depressions, in which a persistent depressive disorder can lead to unbearable pain and suicidal.
1 in 7 women and 1 in 16 men were victims of domestic violence in their lifetime. There are 5 different types of abuse. Firstly, physical, the most common and well-known form of abuse. It can be hitting, kicking, making it seem like an accident, in which may result in victims getting injured, thus leaving bruises and marks. Next is financial abuse. This is common for those who have a job, coming home with a paycheck and not actually see any of it. Usually, money will be spent on non-essential items such as drugs, alcohol, and hobbies. The third one is verbal abuse, which I believe is the most powerful abuse. This could be any abusive language used to embarrass or threaten the victim. It could be name-calling, telling you that you're worthless and that you have no purpose in life. Next is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is by using sex in an exploitative fashion or forcing sex on another person. Sexual abuse also may include both verbal and physical behavior. Also, having consented to sexual activity in the past does not indicate current consent. The last one is control abuse. Controlling behavior, the belief that they are justified in the controlling behavior and the resultant abuse is the core issue in domestic violence. Abuser tends to control the victim as an act of dominance. It is often subtle, almost always insidious and pervasive. Some of the example is by checking mileage, monitoring phone calls, and encouraging dependency by making the victim believe that they are incapable of surviving on their own.
As coronavirus pandemic grows, so does domestic violence. Home isolation, which is crucial to fight against the virus, is likely to give more power to the abuser, as victims are unable to go outside during the conflict, leading to bigger and more frequent fights. Moreover, victims could disregard orders to stay home if they seek immediate refuge, and it is more dangerous now for them to seek help as the abuser may be monitoring their every move. Victims who are not able to work during the MCO may become more financially dependent on the abuser, making it harder for them to escape. And study shows that abusers are more likely to hurt their partner and others in the wake of personal crisis during loss of job and financial problems. The Talian Kasih hotline had seen an increase of 57% calls from women in distress up to March 26. This has clearly shown how intense psychological and physical mistreatment can get when people are kept 24 hours a day together in the same space. The isolation had also weakened the support network, making it far more difficult for victims to get help or escape.
Almost 1/4 of the world's population is currently on lockdown, and more countries are following suit to prevent further spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus. As distancing measures are put in place and people are encouraged to stay at home, the risk of intimate partner violence is likely to increase. There is a case in China. A 26-year-old woman named Lily found herself entangled in more and more arguments with her husband, with whom she now had to spend every hour in their home in Anhui province in eastern China. On March 1st, while Lily was holding her 11-month-old daughter, her husband began to beat her with a high chair. She's not sure how many times he hit her. Eventually, she says, one of her legs lost feeling and she fell to the ground, still holding the baby in her arms. Lily, her full name is not being used for her safety, said that her husband had abused her throughout the 6-year relationship, but that the COVID-19 outbreak made things far worse. At the same time, shelters are closing or under-resourced. Emergency rooms are full and people don't want to go out in public and risk getting COVID-19. The things people use in their safety plan are no longer available, which leave survivors trapped in an escalating cycle of tension, power, and control.
Victims of domestic violence can initially seek advice and explore their options such as shelter and crisis support by contacting the Women's Aid Organization, who are one call and one text away.
Victims in need of medical assistance can directly head to any one-stop crisis centers located at the emergency rooms of government hospitals. These OSCCs are free of charge and also provide victims access to police protection, legal advice, and shelter. Victims can obtain an emergency protection order by Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat JKM through Talian Nur 15999 or by visiting JKM. The EBO will instruct the abuser to stop committing acts of violence towards the victim for 7 days. Victims should remember to first keep emergency numbers in their phone and ensure there is sufficient credit for calls
and tax. Second, they should keep important documents like ICs and birth certificates somewhere safe. And third, they should also tell someone they trust about the abuse.
If you know or suspect that someone is a victim of domestic violence, here are some tips to help you support them in this situation. First, know the signs. The first step to action is to familiarize individuals and the community with possible signs and indicators of domestic violence. These signs can vary and do not always come with physical symptoms. It includes many forms of abusive behavior enacted to control the victim in various ways, including emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and economic abuse. Second, get your community organized. There is safety and influence in numbers when intervening to stop an abuser. So just as many neighborhoods have neighborhood watch to stop crime, start organizing a network of folks who will commit to intervene in domestic violence situations. Next, check in regularly. If you fear for your friends or neighbor's life, call or text them at a random time to see if they are doing well. Every small gesture helps provide relief and also build the victim's confidence in eventually reaching to you for help. Next, listen to empower. If a victim of domestic violence reaches out to you, listen. Let them know that you believe in them and do not judge their choices. Victims are often feel completely isolated and are often belittled by their partner. Thus, it is important to enable her to feel safe when confiding in you because eventually, they may well be able to gather enough courage to tell you exactly what is happening and to ask for help. The last one, bring or be the backup. Intervening with domestic violence situations can be dangerous, especially if the abuser has a weapon and is intoxicated by drinks or drugs. Also, let the victim know that you will be willing to be a witness while you are around. Request for backup by contacting the authorities or your local emergency services.
And as for the conclusion, we should recognize that for a large proportion of people, medication is not an indulgence and touch is not a luxury. And that for many of us, the protocol of Clorox wipes and inadequate masks is nothing compared with daily tasks of disinfecting one's own mind. And also, for most of us, staying home is the safest option. But for some, staying home could be more dangerous than the virus itself. And as critical as it is to break the chain of coronavirus, it is also critical to break the cycle of domestic violence. And if you wish to support the fight against domestic violence, here's the link for you guys to contribute to this NGO supporting women and children survivors of domestic violence. Let's play our role in supporting and helping them to survive. Thank you.